Now, if you've been with me for a while, you know there's a couple things that I really believe that God has revealed to me that has shaped a lot of who I am, my message, my ministry as a pastor. One is this covenant relationship, and if you've been here, you understand what I'm talking about. We all want God to be our God, but God made a covenant with man, and he said, I will be your God if you will be my people. We want God always to do his part, but we got to understand we got to do our part. And that was a revelation God gave me, that we need to become God's people. And how do you become God's people? You apply God's word to your life. You do what God says to do. You show that you belong to him by your actions. And so when you belong to God, then God says, I'll do what you can't. We'll be in this covenant relationship. And I believe that. And I believe that we're in a covenant relationship with God, that God will be our God if we will be his people. But I also believe this. I believe that once we give our heart to God, once we say yes to Jesus, then God wants us to live a life that is a life of serving him, a life of following him. God wants there to be some fruit in our life. You know, I'm not much of a farmer. I got some farmers here this morning, but I'm not much of a farmer. But I know this, if I plant tomatoes out and no tomatoes come on that vine, I'm not happy with that vine. Matter of fact, it's a full waste of time, isn't it? You've transplanted it, you've watered it, you've fertilized it, you've hoped, and nothing came on it. Well, I've got a peach tree like that. I think it's the 4th year of the peach tree. There's been no peaches on that tree since I planted it. Guess what? That peach tree is probably going to find another purpose like firewood or just in the garbage this year, because why have a peach tree that doesn't provide any peaches, right? I mean, I figure I've given it long enough to provide peaches and it's not done it yet, because we expect fruit from the trees and from the plants that we plant, because that's what they're supposed to do. Well, God expects fruit from us. He expects us to live this wise life, this life of, he wants us to be successful, but here's the real reality of that. God not just wants us to be successful, he wants us to have the best life possible. Now, I'm not one of these prosperity teachers that say that you should be wealthy and you should be, have everything you dream of and everything you want. I believe we can pray some selfish prayers. But I do believe this, that God has a plan for every life. God has a plan for your life. He has a plan for my life. And I believe that when we follow Jesus, in John 10:10, my key verse, my life verse, I mean, everything, I think about that. I meditate on it all the time. John 10:10 says, look, the enemy came to kill, steal, and destroy. He wants bad things for your life. He wants to make you foolish, not wise. He wants bad things for your family. He wants bad things for your future. He wants to steal, to rob, to kill every hope, every dream that you have, every good thing in your life. And Jesus said the enemy's come to steal, kill, and destroy. But he said, I have come that you may have life. And I love the way the Bible emphasizes this. Not just an ordinary life, but life to the full, the best life possible. See, when we go shopping, there's a lot of times on the shelves that it depends on really where you're at financially, and what's on sale. But I'm a value shopper, but I know sometimes you get what you pay for, right? Sometimes you buy the cheap paper towels and they don't really work too good. Sometimes you buy the least expensive and you got what you paid for. It's disastrous. And you end up going back and buying again anyway. So you cost double what it should have if you'd have just bought the best in the first place, right? So when we stand at a grocery store or a Walmart, there's always these choices. It's good, it's better, and it's best. We always have that choice when we're shopping. I mean, we can do that. You can go to Walmart and get your tennis shoes. Okay? Or you can go to Kohl's and get your tennis shoes, or you can go to Dick's Sporting Goods and pay 3 times more than you should and get your tennis shoes, right? So we always got this choice in life. Well, Jesus is saying, look, I don't want you just to have a good life. That's not it. I don't want you to have a better life. He said, I've come and died so that you can have the best life possible, that you can have the best. And the best is following him and fulfilling his will for your life. He has a plan for your life, and discovering that and then living for that. And so in the book of Proverbs, King Solomon talks about 4 different types of people. 4 different types of people. And I'm going to go through those with you this morning. And these 4 different types really represent different levels of wisdom. Okay? So the first type, the Proverbs calls it the simple. The simple. Proverbs 1:4 says, these proverbs will give insight to the simple, knowledge and discernment to the young. Okay? Now, what the Bible's saying here is the simple, it's typically youthfulness. It's typically people who are younger before they knew any better. Come on now, parents, can I get an amen? Before they knew any better. Now, I want you to think about this, that when I was younger, and probably when you were younger, you made some really knuckleheaded decisions in your life. You thought you were doing something good, and it ended up being disastrous, okay? You thought, I remember one time I thought I was going to pull a prank, and I was going to have fun with my mom and my dad, and they were having a cookout at their house, and they had all the relatives there, and I went out in the garage, and somewhere along the way, we went somewhere, and I bought this little fake ring, and it slipped on the bottom, and it looked like a nail going through your finger, and it just rode right there, and you could go and go, it looked like a nail. I thought, I'm going to get Mom. I'm going to get her. And so I went to the garage with a house full of people, and I got a can of red paint. And I just kind of dipped my hand down that red paint, and so it was like dripping off and stuff, and that nail was coming through, and I ran in there, and I'm like, Mom, look, oh no. And Mom starts to have this meltdown. I mean, she starts to, panic. And before I knew it, it went too far. And I couldn't get her to stop. Her emotions and her actions were way beyond. And I'm like, Mom, I'm joking. Mom, it's okay. Mom. And she's like panicking, calling 911. And I popped the ring off. Said, Mom, it's fake. I wish I'd never done that. Because she got really mad at me. Because she came unglued in front of all of her family and friends. And that was not wisdom. That was not wisdom. And we've probably all done silly things that we can look back at and say, man, that wasn't very smart to have done. See, the problem is with people who are simple or the young is they just don't know any better. They can't see the problems that might be around the next corner. The wise might say, you don't want to do that. You don't want to go there. You're going to get hurt if you do that. And they just don't get it. They just don't see it the same way. See, when you're young, you have knowledge. And you have information, but you don't have wisdom yet of how to apply that knowledge and that information. And you're going to make some bad decisions. And to quote the philosopher, Taylor Swift, this is what she says: when you're 15, somebody tells you they love you, and you're going to believe them. Somebody tells you they love you, and you're going to believe them. Because you are simple. You don't have wisdom yet. You don't see the bigger picture yet. See, we need people in our lives who have some wisdom. We need people in our lives that we can lean on. We can borrow that wisdom from time to time to help us avoid the simple mistakes. Truth is, there's a little simple in all of us. There's a little simple in all of us. This past year, we were experiencing what I thought was going to be an experience of a lifetime, and I realize it's happening again next year now. But we were having, and many of you probably remember this, a solar eclipse, a full eclipse where the sun was going to go black. And I got all excited about that, and I began to try to secure those eclipse glasses. Did any of you all get any of those last year? Yeah. Well, they were sold out. You know that, right? I mean, you had to go crazy and on eBay and everything else. But I got my family some of those eclipse glasses. And I'm thinking, okay, we're going to watch this thing. We drove down south to where we could get to the totality eclipse where we could see that and it go dark and the crickets began to chirp, and it was neat for about, 30 seconds. It was really, really neat. But I remember I got my glasses in the mail and I thought, okay, I want to see how these things work. Now, if you're a welder, you're probably familiar with the same thing. It's a really dark glass that you look through. Well, these are little paper glasses with a little film on them. Many of you know what I'm talking about. And I put those on, I go outside and I look up at the sun. And I'm like, well, I can't hardly see a thing, And it was this tiny, tiny little dot when I looked up. It wasn't massive, and I could see this little bitty pin light up there. And I said, I want to see more. I want to see the flame shooting off of the sun, I want to see, some of the beautiful sights of the sun burning. So I had an ideal. I thought, this is awesome. I mean, I'm a genius. I thought, I'm going to go get my binoculars. And I'm gonna have my glasses on. I'm gonna look through my binoculars, and I'm gonna see the sun very large, and I'm gonna see what it really looks like. And I was excited, I'm like, ooh, this is cool. I love this kind of stuff. And so I got my binoculars. I ran out, and I'm on my deck, and I have my glasses on. I put my binoculars up, and I'm looking for the sun, and I find the sun, and it's pretty big now, okay? And I'm like, ooh, oh, and then all of a sudden I screamed as loud as I could because I didn't realize that looking through the binoculars was like a magnifying glass. And it came through And in about 4 seconds, it burnt 2 holes in my glasses. And now I'm looking at the full force of the sun through binoculars. I saw spots for days. I'm not kidding. I thought I'd blinded myself. It hurt. It was so bright, okay? But that's being foolish, okay? That's not knowing any better. But I can tell you this, I will never do that again. So I learned some wisdom through it, okay? That is not the way to do that. Don't try that at home, all right? You will hurt yourself. And so really the cure for the simple is just time. It's time. Until you've lived enough to gain wisdom, until you've experienced enough, relied on God enough to gain wisdom, it just takes time. You need to find someone else that you can engage that will share their wisdom with you. And the second type of person that Proverbs talks about is the fool. So you got the simple and you got the fool. The fool knows what to do and decides not to do it, or knows what not to do and does it anyway. The fool is the person who just throws caution to the wind and says, yeah, you say don't do that, but I'm going to show you, I'm going to do it anyway. You know, or I know I should be like that, or I know I should do that, but I'm not going to do it. And the Bible in Proverbs talks a lot about the fool. All right, Proverbs 8:5 says, you simple people, use good judgment. So there's the simple, use good judgment, learn. You foolish people, show some understanding. Proverbs 5:23, he will die for lack of self-control. He will be lost because of his great foolishness. In Proverbs 10:23, doing wrong is fun for a fool, but living wisely brings pleasure to the sensible. See, the fool says, this is fun, I'm going to do it. I don't care what the cost, I'm going to do it anyway. And the fool just throws caution to the wind. And I want you to think about this. If you're like me, there's been a few times in your life that you've done some foolish things. I'm not talking about with just binoculars. But there's been some foolish decisions in my life. And a lot of times when I make those foolish decisions, it's because I'm around a bunch of other people who are making the same foolish decision. You know, it's because their foolish activity kind of leads me to foolish activity. Now think about this. I don't know where you are in your walk. I don't know where you are in your journey. But I can tell you some of the biggest mistakes I ever made. When I wanted to experiment with drinking, it was with a bunch of other people. And they said, hey, this is what you should do. And they were acting foolish. And I just kind of chimed in and acted foolish with them. You know, I knew I wasn't supposed to, but I did it anyway. And when I could go story after story after story. A lot of times the group pulls us into their foolishness. That's why Proverbs 13:20 says, walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools and get in trouble. You need to choose your friends wisely, those you hang out with. Because let me tell you, peer pressure is not just for teenagers. We're all susceptible to it. To be in with the right people who are going to bring wisdom into our life and not foolishness. For the fool, the cure, unfortunately, is usually tragedy. Something bad has to happen in their life for them to correct their behavior. This is often when people turn to God, when they hit tragedy in their life. See, God doesn't cause the tragedy, but He will use the tragedy. He doesn't cause it, but He will use it, and He will bring you to a place where you're more open to experiencing Him. See, people look for help and they look for God when they experience tragedy. I know for me, the tragic event in my life that brought me back to a place of submitting to God was the loss of my grandfather. I'll never forget it, as I have some of my aunts and my dad's here today. It's funeral and coming home on a Sunday night, and after being with the family and having that funeral on Saturday, and that was the first time I'd ever lost someone close to me that I could remember. And that made me think about life differently. It made me think about where I was differently. And it brought me to a realization that I wasn't where I wanted to be. And that night I got to church, and that night when the altar call was given, I was the first one down, because that tragic event for me made me draw closer to God. And to the fool, it's normally tragedy that brings them closer to God. It's normally the loss of someone. It's normally hurting someone. You know, I can't tell you how many times when life seems to flip upside down, people come and say, I'm blowing it and I need God. And God will take that tragedy and use it, even though He didn't cause that tragedy. But He can use it in your life to bring you back in right relationship with Him. See, your God is a restorer. He will take your worst moment of your life and He'll turn it around for the good if you will let Him. For your good if you will let Him. All it is taking it and giving it to Him. It's just saying, here it is, God. I give you all of who I am. The good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. It's yours. And God will take that tragedy and turn it to good if you let Him. The third person that Proverbs talks about, the Bible calls the mocker or the scoffer. We're going to use the word mocker because that's what is in the translation I read a lot, which is the New Living Translation. Now, the mocker is a fool on steroids. That's the best way to describe him. He takes it to a whole other level. They're going to criticize. They're not just going to do what is wrong. They're going to criticize those who do what is right. We often see this on Facebook, unfortunately. We'll see people who will troll the post, and they'll find something they disagree with, and man, they'll just begin to attack. They'll begin to mock. They'll begin to insult. They'll begin to call names. And you'll see this, and I'm sure most of you have experienced this, the mocker who will criticize the wise, who will mock the wise. Often when you see that on Facebook, I have a tendency to think, well, that ain't right. That's all wrong. And my fingers go to the keyboard. And I'm just thinking about, responding. And sometimes I've typed it up and just deleted it back off, But there's a part of me that wants to engage in this debate. Someone's got to defend what's right. Someone's got to defend God. Someone's got to do and say good things here. And I want to. And I've never done it yet. And I know some of you read the same things, you engage in the same ways. Maybe someone in your life mocks you, and you want to engage, you want to respond. Resist that urge. Let me show you why. Proverbs 9, 7 through 8. Anyone who rebukes a mocker will get an insult in return. Anyone who corrects the wicked will get hurt. So don't bother correcting mockers. They will only hate you. I mean, come on. Do you think if you correct them, they're going to say, oh, you're right. I never thought about it that way. Have you ever seen that on Facebook? All I see is banter back and forth, degrading, insults. I never see someone say, I get your point. You're right. So just resist that urge. Because there are people who not only lack wisdom, but they scoff at it. They mock people who are trying to live and display wisdom. And really the only cure for the mockers is God. He's the only one that can change them from the inside out. See, there are those who mock us for being Christians, believing in a God that we've never seen, worshiping a God, coming on Sunday mornings, sowing into the kingdom and giving of our time, our talent, and our resources. There are those in the world that mock that. And the only way they're ever going to see it any differently, the only way they're ever going to experience it any differently is if God changes them. And they allow God to have His way in their life. And then the book of Proverbs goes on. It speaks about one more type of person. And this is the type of person that I hope we all long to be. And the book of Proverbs calls them the wise. The wise. It's not a person who is smarter or has more education. They're the ones that are teachable. They are pliable. They realize they don't have all the answers. Always have a teachable heart. Always be willing to learn from others. Always remain soft, pliable, teachable. That's a trait of a person with wisdom. Proverbs 9:9 says it this way. Instruct the wise, and they will become wiser. Teach the righteous, and they will learn even more. So you got these four persons, different people mentioned in the book of Proverbs. The simple, the fool, the mocker, and the wise. And what Solomon's trying to say is, look, you want to be the wise. You want to be teachable. You want to be open. You want other people to help you along the way. See, to kind of sum it up, it says, correct the simple, and they won't get you. Correct the fool, and they will ignore you. Correct the mocker, and they will hate you. and correct the wise, and they will thank you. They will thank you. So all of this talk about wisdom, about being wise, where do you begin to gain wisdom? How do we begin to grow wise the way Solomon did? And Proverbs 9:10 is the key. It says, "For the Lord is the foundation of wisdom. Knowledge of the Holy One results in good judgment." Another translation says, "Fear of the Lord brings us to knowledge." See, knowledge knows about God. Wisdom walks with God. Many times in the Bible, it instructs us to fear the Lord. And I think that's maybe one of the most misunderstood passages in the Bible. Because we look at this Old Testament God, we look at the way armies were annihilated and people were wiped out and judgment was brought. And we think, well, to fear the Lord means to say, okay, God, you're bigger than I am. I'm afraid. I know that you can make me a little grease spot anytime you want to. I know that you can just kind of flick me and my life's over, And yes, we understand that God is all powerful and God is a big God, but that's not the way fear is really translated into this. When we hear the words fear the Lord, it might be easier for us to understand. It says, stand in awe and reverence of God. Fear Him by acknowledging that He is a wonderful creator, that He is a big God. And the Bible goes on and gives us other things, not just that He is holy, that He is worthy. That's how you fear God. You say, God, you are holy. You are worthy. God, I stand in awe of what you've done. I stand in awe of who you are. See, at Christmas time, it's so easy to stand in awe of God. When we think about what He did in giving His Son to come to this earth, the way He came as an infant, as simple and as innocent as He could. The Bible, I was telling our dream team this morning, I said the Bible describes it. Jesus literally took His crown off, took His royal robes off, and left those in heaven to become Emmanuel, God with us. And He came as innocent. Listen, I know that we live in a day and age, and I'm going to give you a preview of next week. We live in a day and age where most stories that we have a hard time believing start with once upon a time. Once upon a time in a land far, far away. And so many of us take the Christmas story and we kind of put it in that same category. It seems like one of those wonderful stories that was just written. Listen, the biblical story of Jesus does not start with once upon a time. It starts years and thousands of years earlier by prophecy after prophecy. There was something so significant that happened when Jesus was born that you acknowledge it every time you recite the date. Every time you write your check, you acknowledge a year, and that year stands for the year of our Lord. Time even changed when Jesus was born. It made such a difference in this world that His birth was marked forever. It's not just a fairy tale story. It's a reality of a God that loves us, that longed for us to be able to have everything He promised. But the only way for that was for sin to be paid for. See, sin always has a price to it. The question is, who's going to pay for it? Are you? If you pay for it, that means eternal damnation in hell. But if you let Jesus pay for it, the price is still paid. It just means you get to inherit all the good things that God has in store for us. That's what it's all about. I believe that your view of God determines your relationship with Him. One of the things we say over and over is that we hope that when people come to Thrive Church, they get a glimpse of who God is. A little experience. Maybe for the first time they experience something. Maybe they feel something. Maybe they see people who, to me it's just normal people who love God. Maybe they experience that for the first time. A lot of people think, Christians are a bunch of weirdos. They're crazy. They're quacks. And they come to church for the first time, they're like, man, these people are just like me. She talks even more country than I talk. And they just find something that resonates. and through our worship and through our word, we hope somehow they get a glimpse of who God is, of who Jesus is, because a right view of Jesus can change your life forever. A glimpse of who he is can change your life. And I can give you Moses, I can give you Abraham, I can give you Jacob, I can give you person after person. One of my favorites is Saul, who lacked wisdom. He was knowledgeable. He was trained. I mean, he had all the Ivy League degrees that you wanted. He was persecuting Christians. He was a mocker. And the only thing that can change a mocker is God. And on his way to hunt down some more Christians, he met Jesus on the road to Damascus. And he got a glimpse of who he was. And it changed his life. It changed his life. And our whole